And all that does, it comes from the military, right? It does. And making sure that you're getting adequate sleep and resting when you can. All these things have stemmed from military, which essentially has helped me on my journey, and is what I want to basically show to my clients and to everybody that I come across, is it doesn't need to be that complicated. It doesn't need to be confusing. It doesn't need to be overwhelming. Let's just start to integrate these daily actions slowly over a period of time, and you'll be surprised at how simple, not easy, but how simple things can be.
Hey guys, welcome to the Live, Train, Perform podcast. I'm your host, Shaun Kober, and joining me today is Mr. Rob Morgan. This guy is a legend. He's quite well known in the Soi in Thailand, where I work. I currently work at Tiger Muay Thai. I met Rob in 2015, I think it was. He was one of the coaches at Unit 27, and this was back when Unit 27 had and pretty much all of their coaching staff were fucking awesome. So, Rob Morgan, welcome to the podcast, mate.
Thanks, brother. Great to be on the show.
Yeah, let's get started, mate. So, first of all, obviously I met you in Thailand. Was it 2015? I think it was 2015. How long were you in Thailand for at Unit 27?
It was probably around about then. I first moved to Thailand and started working at Unit 27 at the back end of 2014. So I got there permanently December 2014. So I think it was about sometime in 2015 our paths would have crossed first.
Can you go through the journey of how you ended up in Thailand?
Yeah, I'd basically done a lot of traveling. I traveled all over the world. You know, I think I've been to over 50 countries, but Thailand was the one place that just kept pulling me back, and in particular Phuket. So before I actually moved there, probably spent 6 or 7 trips out there. Initially, what took me to Phuket was the Muay Thai kind of aspect of it. So I went out and did a couple of different training holidays. Initially, I was out there, did a bit of backpacking and sightseeing and all that sort of stuff, but just kind of fell in love with the whole country. And then basically I went out there 1 year, I think it was back end of 2013. And it just kind of kept growing and growing year after year in terms of what was available there. And then obviously the Soi, Tiger Muay Thai is kind of what brought me to the Soi. And Unit 27 had kind of just opened. I think I was one of their first customers in the first week that they opened there. So I started training, spent a bit of time there. I think I spent like a month there that year, and then headed off back to London, where I was working at the time. I had a small kind of PT business set up back in London. And before I left, I remember, chatting to the guys at Unit 27. And obviously Rob was an ex-military guy who'd set Unit 27 up. So we kind of connected. And then when I left, I just remember saying, look, if there's ever an opportunity out here and you're looking for somebody, then, hit me up. It's something I'd love to do. And then I went back to London, carried on chipping away, building my business there. And I think it was about almost a year later, that they kind of reached out. Obviously things had gone from strength to strength there at Unit 27. They expanded. They doubled the size of the gym. They were looking for a new coach. So they asked me, is this something I was interested in? So at the time, it wasn't really kind of on my radar, although I love Thailand. It wasn't really on my radar to move there. So it was quite a big decision. Obviously, I'd spent a lot of time and work and energy into kind of building the business that I had in London and my client base, and I had some kind of allegiances there. But in the end, it was kind of a no-brainer for me. Didn't know how long it would be. Initially, I thought maybe 3 months, 6 months, kind of see how it goes. And then that was like 5.5, nearly 6 years ago. I've actually only been back to the UK 3 times since then in that whole time. So literally didn't look back after that point. And just kind of loved being in Phuket, loved that island life. I love the simplicity of it that kind of pulls us all in. And, I think you're in a very similar position to me. And then, spent a couple of years at Unit 27. And that's when then kind of we would have first met. And I think you came over for a few trips as well, right before you actually made the permanent move. So kind of similar story. I was just maybe a year or two ahead of you.
Yeah. And that's what I was just thinking whilst you're saying that, man. With a lot of our journey, there's a lot of parallels there. The first time I came to Thailand was 2013. I was traveling. I'd just recently gotten out of the army after 6 years, and I was traveling around the world. And I spent 6 months, 3 months in Southeast Asia, and then 3 months through Europe in 2013. And I came to Thailand, and I was over in Patong, and I was getting on the piss and, carrying on over there for a week. And I was like, we'd already been backpacking for a month, and I was like, I need to go and train. I need to, get my head right. And end up coming to Tiger Muay Thai for a week and trained there, and then continued traveling through Southeast Asia for another couple of months, went over to Europe. And then on the way back home to Australia, we stopped off on the soy again and trained at Tiger for another 2 weeks, and, wrote up resumes and applied for jobs and things like that for when we got home. And same thing, mate. Like, I just fell in love with the place, and there was just something that drew me back again and again and again. So over the next few years, then I continued coming back, and I'd work for 8 or 9 months every year, and then travel for 3 or 4 months every year. And I would come to Thailand and train for a month, and that's when I met you in 2015, I think it was. I trained at Titan for 2 weeks, and then I trained at Unit for 2 weeks, and then I came back again the following year, and then 2017, I ended up breaking up with my girlfriend and coming back to Thailand. So definitely a lot of similarities there. You were also ex-military, and there's a lot of people that, a lot of my mates listen to this podcast, and there's a lot of service personnel, current serving and ex-serving that listen. So if we can go back to your military career, talk about, why you joined the military, what you did, how long you were in for, and then kind of your transition from there into ending up in Thailand, basically.
Yeah, so I joined the army at 16. And it was just something I always wanted to do all through my childhood. Not sure why, but for some reason I was just hell-bent on joining the army. And being kind of one of the youngest in my year, my birthday was in the August, and I left school in the July, sat my exams. I turned 16 in the August, and then 2 weeks later in September, I joined up. And like, obviously my parents at the time weren't too keen on the thought of me going off to the army at that young age. Wasn't, didn't even need to shave at that point, fresh-faced, baby-faced 16-year-old. But my dad kind of said, they had to give me permission, and they had to sign, they had to authorize for me at that age. My dad kind of said he was happy to do it, but only if I did something that would give me a skill or a trade on the back end of it. So I actually wanted to join the infantry or the artillery. I'd actually joined the Army Cadets at 13 and just loved the whole military, aspect of it. As a 13, 14, 15-year-old, going up to the hills in Brecon and spending the weekend away, and getting to do all your weapons handling and all that sort of stuff just really excited me. So that's the kind of route I always wanted to go down. But my dad kind of talked me into getting a skill, getting a trade, and I'd actually done pretty well at school. I did pretty well in my exams. So I ended up joining the Royal Signals. So I was a comms guy, I was a comms engineer. So not necessarily, the thing I wanted to do, but it was a way of me getting in, and I understood my dad's reasoning for that. That if it wasn't something I continued with, that it was something I could fall back on and have that trade behind me. So I joined, did my basic training as a 16-year-old. I think it was about eight or 9 months, and then you go off to your trade school. So spent that time becoming a comms engineer, basically. So it's almost like a military college. You do all your basic training and you go off to a sort of military college. So you're still doing all your soldering and your your ranges and your weapon handling and your field craft and all these types of things, but you're also learning and getting in an apprenticeship as well at the same time. So it's pretty handy. Then I went to my working unit. I was in my first working unit at 18, and this was in 2001. And literally, as soon as I got to my working unit, I think within a month, like September 11th, had kicked off. So the British Army for quite a long time weren't particularly that busy. There was things going on in the Balkans and Kosovo and Bosnia at the back end of the 90s, and there was Northern Ireland before that. But it was quite a quiet period. So when I got to my working unit, then, September 11th happened and everything that was going on in Iraq with Saddam Hussein and the weapons of mass destruction and all that sort of stuff. So it was a busy period to be kind of getting in. But I was kind of excited by all that. So the first couple of years was basically, we were training. We were on standby to deploy, waiting to see what was going to happen out there. Then I ended up going to Iraq in 2013 as a 19-year-old, I think it was at the time. So I did my first tour in Iraq. Obviously, being a comms guy wasn't necessarily like I was in the combat soldier. I wasn't on the front line. So I was kind of in the rear with the gear, as we say. So not necessarily a frontline troop, but yeah, out there kind of for my 6-month tour. And then I ended up spending 8 years, did some time out in Northern Ireland, went to the Falklands for a little bit of time. Really enjoyed my time. One of the best things I've ever done. Spent some time kind of, doing all the things that I'd wanted to do as a boy growing up. And then I got to a point where I was 23, 24. In my job, in my trade, you progress quite quickly. So I was at a point, even though I'd actually got myself into a little bit of mischief and a little bit of trouble along the way, I'd still managed to progress pretty quickly. And I was basically faced with a crossroads of going for my upgrade as sergeant's course, which essentially meant going back to trade training for another almost 12 months, which wasn't something I was really that keen to do. Like I said at the start, I joined up as a comms guy, but didn't really necessarily have too much of an interest in that particular field. So the thought of kind of going back to trade training at the trade school for that period of time in order to be able to apply for the sergeant's course didn't really appeal to me. So I looked at doing a few other things, but given my conduct records, probably not, well, don't know if you want to go into that too much, but
yeah, I'd be happy to talk about some of the mischief you got up to, mate, because I got charged a few times whilst I was in the army as well. And, in the Australian army, they say you're not a real soldier unless you've been charged.
Yeah. So, you know the environment, mate. You're a young kid. Particularly for me, the ages of 16 to 18 are very important to a young man, and it kind of sets the tone for a lot of your life. So being in that environment at that age with all the kind of testosterone and the machoism and everything that comes along with that, just kind of didn't necessarily get led down the wrong path, but just ended up in a few situations that I probably ended up making a few bad decisions, drink and violence and all that sort of stuff, and basically ended up before I went to Iraq, I think probably 6 months prior to me going to Iraq, got into a bit of a scrap. It was actually on the Queen's Jubilee weekend, so we'd been given the long weekend off, and I ended up in Nottingham, which is like a university city in England, and basically ended up getting a scrap. And my honesty served against me, let's put it that way, when I actually got arrested, taken to the cells and all the rest of it, and basically was faced with being charged with ABH, actually bodily harm. and looking at being thrown out of the army and being sent to prison basically as an 18-year-old. And if it wasn't for my commanding officer at the time, that probably would have happened. So I was literally, I'd boxed my room up. I had my bag was packed, basically told not to expect to come back, which was obviously quite a daunting experience for an 18-year-old kid. But yeah, my commanding officer at the time basically came to court with me, and yeah, just I think the kind of the speech or the words he said basically ensured that I didn't kind of get sent away.
I think that's interesting that your CEO like rolled into the courthouse and basically vouched for you. Here's the thing as well that the listeners need to understand is, like, I'm assuming that you are fucking good at your job, right? Like, if you're not good at your job and if you're a little bit of a shit fight, then your commanding officer is typically not going to go into bat for you. But if you're good at your job and, you get into a little bit of mischief here and there, then, people are going to typically come into bat for you and be on your side because they need you, man. They need fucking good operators. They need good soldiers in the units.
Yeah, 100%.
What were your lessons that you learned from that? What did you take away from those or from that moment and those periods that you went through?
Well, I'd like to say I learnt my lesson from that, but truth be told, I probably didn't. It probably took me another good few instances to actually learn my lesson. And that for me it was a wake up call, and I was so lucky with what happened. And basically, although I didn't get a sentence, I was given community service and a fine. And actually ended up getting demoted within the army, and it kind of prevented me from doing a lot of things. At the time, I was down. I was in my role, one of the first on the list to kind of deploy, but wasn't able to deploy then straight away immediately. So basically, I had a bit of a wake up call, and I remember my officer in command at the time basically saying, "Look, you've got this potential, in terms of the trust that we have in you and how good you are at your job, but there's some other things that you really need to work on and to improve on." And I did that, to be honest. And that, to be honest, was the time that I really started to take my training seriously. Up until then, I was a little bit loose, a little bit wayward, didn't really necessarily have a kind of clear focus. And that's really when I started to, like, obviously being military, you start training and you're doing your phys and your PT and all the rest of it, but taking it to that next level in terms of really getting into the weight training and doing my own phys, my own training, and focusing all my energy on that rather than hitting the piss, hitting the town, chasing the girls, getting into fights and all that sort of stuff that kind of wasn't serving me. So ever since then, the training has been my compass and everything that kind of brings me back to kind of a neutral point. Like I said, I didn't quite learn the lesson at that stage, but definitely a big wake up call for me. And it helped to kind of obviously keep me on track, and my life could have turned out a lot differently.
Yeah, sorry, mate. There was a little bit of a delay there. But I think what you just said then is important for a lot of people, and a lot of people resonate with this. And I'm very similar, man, is that, I grew up playing rugby and, I came from a poor family and I was aggressive at times. And for me, rugby was how I channeled that aggression. And if I wasn't playing rugby, then obviously I was a soldier. So I was channeling that aggression towards that. And then training was that controlled aggression as well. So I think that's important to note for a lot of men that listen that do have aggression and do have, some grudges that they're holding, and, they need an outlet to be able to express that. And I think, training is a great way of doing that. So no, that's awesome, man. Thanks for sharing that. Kind of what happened from there? Like, so you obviously got to the crossroads where you decided that was not the direction that you wanted to go. Was there a penny drop moment, or?
I wasn't necessarily done with the army. I was just done with my role and my kind of trade. So I looked at doing a few other things, but given my conduct records, I basically wasn't allowed to recap badge or to apply for a different role within a different regiment or a different corps. So then the decision came, right, I either stay in and do the upgraded course and go for the sergeant, or I get out. And being at that time in my life, there was a lot of it was essentially stay in and do 22 years, or get out now while you're young enough to be able to do something else. And there was a lot of things that I kind of wanted to do in my life. And when you get to 24, you're a lot of a different person to you are when you're 16, right? So there was things that I wanted to do in my life. So in the end, I made a decision that I wanted to get out. And yeah, very, very similar to you. First thing I did was I went traveling. So I kind of got out. My mate had just done a tour in Iraq himself. So we headed for South America, Brazil, Argentina, and had a bit of a rip out there and a good time. And then I kind of did my what we call a resettlement period, which, to be honest, was pretty good. The British Army, I'm not sure what it's like down here in Australia, but the British Army in particular, they're good at helping you resettle, good at giving you funding to go away and do courses if you want to reskill, or if you want to kind of continue with the skills that you kind of have already learnt. So they help you. They give you funding for, I think it's 10 years. I'm not sure if it's the same now, but they'll help fund courses and education courses for you for up to 10 years. So I did, even though communications wasn't necessarily a passion of mine, having that in the bag, and obviously, like I said, from my mindset, having something to fall back on, which would essentially give me a reasonably paid job when I go out to Civvy Street, I decided to kind of transfer my military qualifications I had into some civilian qualifications, and try and work on the comm sides of it in Civvy Street. So I moved back to Swansea in Wales, and I took my first civvy job, and I think I probably lasted all of about 2 months, because it was such a different way of life to what we were used to kind of, there was no sense of urgency in doing things. And I just it just bored me to tears, the way that things were done. So I think within 6 months, I did my I went to South America, I did my resettlement, I tried a civilian job, and then one of the lads that I used to work with, I was in Northern Ireland when I left, and basically a comms job had come up on the camp that I'd been on. So within 6 months, I was back on the camp in Lisbon that I'd just left as a civilian, basically getting paid twice as much, walking over the grass with long hair. So life was pretty good. So I'd kind of got out of the military, but then I was still back in that circle, and everybody that I was working with was ex-military, and I was on a military base. So I spent essentially the next, I think, 2.5 years basically contracting for the MOD on military bases with ex-military guys. So right. Kind of getting that bond back, that camaraderie that I'd kind of missed within that first 6 months.
Right. I think that's important, mate. Like that's such a big thing that I hear from a lot of my mates, and I get a lot of people that reach out to me as well and ask me about my transition period. And I mean, it sounds like the British Army has like a much better transition process than the Australian Army. Like we pretty much just get discharged and we're left to our own devices, So a lot of people struggle with that transition period, because you're a professional working with these other highly professional soldiers, and everything's structured, everything's regimented, you've got standard operating procedures, you've got high standards, and all of a sudden, like, you're out of the army and you're left to your own devices, and you don't have that structure, and you don't have that self-identity, you don't have that camaraderie, that you don't have that purpose and direction and things like that. So it makes sense to me that you went back into, and that's the thing, man, like this is something that I notice as well, going from military to civilian is, the same thing. The civilians that you work with just don't have the same professionalism. They don't have the same high standards, and they don't have the same sense of urgency. And it's difficult for military personnel, especially like a highly functioning military personnel that transitions to the civilian world, and the standards are completely different, and it's a bit of a shock to the system.
Yeah, and the standards and the values that are driven into you for so many years, then they're not necessarily appreciated as much in the civilian workplace, and that's kind of it's just the way it is. But that, I think what you said about having that sense of identity is so important, particularly for guys when you get out, because you have this identity of being a soldier, and you're driven by all these values and these morals. And then all of a sudden, you kind of lose that identity, right? And like, unless you know who you are and what your mission is, or unless you have a mission, you don't know what you're doing, and that's why a lot of guys end up kind of losing track and losing their way, I think, particularly when they get out.
Yeah.
So I actually spent that time basically working on the military contracts, and eventually I actually ended up taking a military contract out in the Middle East. So I was then back out in Afghanistan. So I basically spent another 3 years after that contracting out in Afghan. So I was doing 3 months on, 1 month off, or 4 months on, 6 weeks off, and then that gave that. That kind of, although I'd lost my military identity, I'd still had that identity. Okay, now I'm a contractor. Now I'm in the Middle East. I know what my mission is. I know what I'm doing. I have a purpose, and I have, I have a set of, as you say, SOPs or objectives that I'm working towards. And I found that so useful, and that kind of helped me stay on course and helped me stay on track along the way. So I spent that period then out there. Probably similar to you, like I said, working, saving some cash up in the bank, and then just traveling. So, I was traveling. I went out to Southeast Asia, South America. I was going snowboarding. Kind of
just
Vegas,
living,
road tripping across America, just like doing it all. And that, it kind of, like people think, obviously to somebody that's never been there, working in that environment, but it definitely helped me, number one, to stay on track and give me that identity and give me a purpose for that length of time, but also just give me so much opportunity to like I say, travel and experience new cultures and new things, and I think that had a massive part of my development as well. So although it definitely has its kind of downsides, and some people would definitely question why you would do something like that, there's a lot of positives that come out of it,
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And I think that's a big point, man. It gives you an appreciation. It allows you to be grateful for little things that people take for granted, man. I remember coming back from every one of my deployments. I did 6 months in Iraq, 8 months in East Timor, and 9 months in Afghanistan. And one of my favorite things to do when I got back from deployment was to just simply jump in my car and drive, man. And I would literally just drive, and, I'd see other people that were pissed off by sitting in traffic and things like that. And I was just like, here's me driving along, looking like a fucking idiot with a smile on my face in traffic, listening to music and podcasts and things like that. And for me, that was just like the ultimate freedom, so it was little things like that, it being away and sacrificing and, getting back to my own life, it just gave me that appreciation and that gratitude for just the little simple things that most people take for granted.
Yeah.
from there, mate, like how did you transition into starting your own business? Did you take a PT course, or were you training with someone and then decided to basically go into business on your own, or did you work for someone else first?
So during that time that I was in Afghanistan, kind of obviously knew that that wasn't something that I'd be able to maintain or do forever. It was kind of a short-term thing. So obviously the question was, what do I do next? And I'd always had such an interest in training and fitness, and also in helping people or in doing something worthwhile. So becoming a PT or a coach is kind of something I'd always yearned to do. So while I was out in Afghanistan, I used that time to educate myself, and I was doing courses. And although I was traveling a lot, I was also picking up qualifications along the way. So I'd kind of done a PT course on, I think, one of my leaves. I'd done, kettlebell instructing, suspension training, MMA conditioning, all these kind of calls, all these courses, and then started learning about nutrition, and just basically started developing myself in that area with a goal of ending my time in Afghanistan or contracting in the job that I was doing to basically equip me to be able to go into coaching or to go into personal training. So in order to do that, obviously it took a little bit of time for me to pick up all those qualifications and all those courses and all that knowledge. But essentially I got to a point, like I said, 3 years in, and I said, it's kind of now or never. So I left Afghanistan, handed my notice, and basically I moved to London. So obviously me being from South Wales, the opportunities that you would get in that sort of profession would be a little bit more limited. So I decided to kind of throw it all in and move to London, obviously the capital, and all the opportunities and everything that would bring, and to try and get into the industry and make a name for myself there. So I picked up, given my clearance and everything from the military, I picked up a data security job with the London Stock Exchange. So that's what took me to London. And then I started basically doing military boot camps in the parks in London. So British Military Fitness in Clapham Common and Wimbledon Park for the first few months that I was there, which helped me obviously integrate. So I had the job that was giving me an income, but I was also kind of trying to get my foot in the door at the same time as well. So I was essentially, working two jobs, just grinding it out and trying to make my way. And then I think probably about 3 or 4 months into that, I just decided that I was gonna go all in and try and become a full-time personal trainer. So I handed my notice in at the job at the Stock Exchange, and did my rounds around London and all the gyms, and kind of trying to find my feet, and found a gym that I thought would be a good fit for me. Obviously, it's one of the kind of busiest gyms where I thought that would be a good fit. So yeah, just started PTing full time as a freelancer, paying the rent in the gym, and then trying to build your client base to pick up your first few clients and to cut your teeth as a trainer. Doing it in that environment, and I think in that gym in particular, really helped me because it was such a competitive place to do it. And then I think within the first 3 or 4 months of me being there, I was probably one of the busiest trainers in that gym. So kind of really had a good start with that, and just kind of backed myself to do that, and then just kind of escalated from there. So stayed in London probably for about 18 months, building up the client base. I actually did, I know you're a TFW guy as well, right? So I did my Training for Warriors, qualification, and ended up getting affiliation in London. So I was running Training for Warriors affiliation, small group training in London for a little while. And then I think I'd probably been 18 months to 2 years there, total time in London. And then every winter I was traveling to Thailand to do like this training holiday. And at the time, I remember as I was part of the kind of TFW family or the familia, I remember seeing TFW Thailand, and which was being run by Mark Mariani and Woody at the time. And I remember seeing these guys. I've been to Thailand quite a few times, but never to that area. So I was like, right, I'm going to go out there for a month in December. Obviously, December is quite a quiet time for PTs in London. So I went out there on a holiday and went to train at TFW with Mark and Woody, who obviously you know quite well as well. And seeing them guys online, like training and being in the sun and down on the beach and doing all these workouts, I was like, yeah, how do I become one of those men? So I kind of flew out, did some training with them, then ended up going to, obviously Tiger Muay Thai off the back of that. And then that's what took me to Unit 27. So that's kind of the story that got me there. Going to train with Woody and Mark down at TFW, then discovering Tiger Muay Thai, which, to be honest, I'd done some Muay Thai holidays out in Thailand, but for whatever reason, I kind of tried to stay away from Tiger because it was seen as this, it wasn't. I wanted more of an authentic feel. But then as soon as I got to Tiger and I saw, what was there, it was head and shoulders above everything else that I'd done with the terms of the quality of the trainers and the guys that were training there. And obviously since then, it's just grown and grown and grown. And it's really a world-class facility now. And the job that you guys are doing with all the fighters there is kind of really inspiring for me to have seen as well, the journey that's taken along the way.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's been awesome to be a part of that growth for the last 3 years for me, and obviously coming back, to and from the soy for the last 7 years or so. So watching the soy evolve over that time has been awesome, man. But I want to go back to what you said before about when you first, the first couple of months you built your business and you became one of the busiest trainers in the gym. Is this when KIS Fitness was started? Is this the kind of how it evolved?
Pretty much, yeah. So
can you just explain to the listeners what KIS Fitness is and the principles that was founded on?
Yeah, so KIS Fitness, KIS, is basically keep it simple fitness. And when I kind of left my time in the military, I basically built this ethos or this philosophy on keeping things simple. And obviously when you're spending time in the desert and having tents to train in and minimum equipment available and not always the best nutrition and being in a kind of high stress environment, basically I developed this saying, and me with a few buddies at the time was just keep it simple, train smart, eat well, live simple was kind of the tagline. So when I was then looking at creating my own business, that was basically the message that I wanted to deliver and built all my principles upon was keeping it simple, and just simplifying everything, because as you know, everybody's looking for the secret or the quick fix or the gimmick or the gadget or the shortcut to success, but it's not there. You need the hard work, you need the sacrifice, you need the commitment, and essentially you need to simplify things. So don't go looking at the next shiny thing or the next shiny object. It's let's take a step back, let's simplify everything, and let's get the basics right first. And now I think everybody's so keen to want to optimize things or to kind of biohack into things, but before obviously there's a need for that once you get to a certain level. But for the majority of people, let's just take it a step back first and simplify everything and standardize things, and then we can build off that. So KIS Fitness is essentially about building a foundation in order to develop further.
Yeah, I love that, mate. And a lot of those principles seem to me like they were developed from the military and from your time in the military. And that's kind of how my coaching philosophy has evolved is, I've basically taken all of these principles that I learned in the military and I've applied them to what I'm now currently doing in my life. Is that kind of the evolution for you as well?
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah. It's the guiding principles, or the 7 principles of KIS Fitness is train, move, fuel, hydrate, breathe, think, and rest. So again, taking things back to a simple basis, if you're focusing on all those areas, I believe it helps create a balance, not just in your training and in your fitness, but across all areas of your life. And people that want to create a change in their life, they think straight away, everybody knows that you need to train, or everybody knows that you need to exercise, but they don't want to spend the time to make sure that they're hydrated, or they don't want to spend the time to make sure that their body's in a good state, or that they're focusing on their stress levels, or they're thinking about how they breathe and how they consume oxygen, and all these things that are so important. And unless you get those things right, there's no need to be looking at what's the optimal way of working out for whatever people are looking for. And all that does, it comes from the military, right? It does. And making sure that you're getting adequate sleep and resting when you can. All these things have stemmed from the military, which essentially has helped me on my journey, and is what I want to basically show to my clients and to everybody that I come across, is it doesn't need to be that complicated. It doesn't need to be confusing. It doesn't need to be overwhelming. Let's just start to integrate these daily actions slowly over a period of time, and you'll be surprised at how simple, not easy, but how simple things can be.
Yeah, 100%, man. And I mean, that's why I want to get you on the podcast. And this is why, we've had some really good conversations over the years, and why we have got along so well is because a lot of our principles and a lot of our philosophies are very, very similar. But I think, here's the thing, man, like most good coaches are going to be saying the same things. They're going to be saying it in different ways, but they're putting the same message across, right? Like the basics, the fundamentals need to be built first. And the analogy that I like to use is that, if you've got 4 flat tires and your timing belt's off and you've got no engine oil and no brake fluid and power steering fluid and shit like that, like you can put your fucking foot on the accelerator and try and drive as hard and as fast as you can. But, you're just going to burn the engine out. You need to do the maintenance work. You need to get everything running optimally first before you can then put the foot on the accelerator and get the most out of your training.
Yeah, love that analogy.
Yeah. So those principles that you just spoke about before, mate, I think that's a good segue into pretty much the theme that I'm running with at the moment with the Live, Train, Perform podcast. And I'm going through the Swiss 8 mini series, which is essentially a proactive mental health model to help people schedule in the most important things of their day. And this is an app that was developed by combat veterans, primarily for veterans, but to also help people, the average person, kind of deal with the rising mental health crisis that the Western world's going through. And some of the principles are pretty much in line with what you just said, okay, but they use different wording. Okay, so they've got sleep, nutrition, time management, discipline, fitness, personal growth, mindfulness, and minimalism. So out of all of those principles, which one of those do you think is most important for you?
Yeah, I think it's pretty difficult to pick one, because they're all so important, man. They're all so important. And like you said, it's like all good coaches, we're trying to basically teach the same thing and give the same message. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel, right? So like the Swiss 8 that you've just said there is great. So it's difficult to pick one, but I think if I had to, it would probably be discipline. Because without discipline, you can forget your training, you can forget your nutrition, you can forget your mindfulness. You need to have discipline in order to work, I think, in all those areas. And discipline comes from working in each of those areas. And particularly for us military guys, we're taught discipline, as soon as we join up, it's drilled into us. But I think more than discipline, it's self-discipline, because you can have an external discipline from an outside force or an outside source, whether it's, in the army, we're taught discipline with the kind of risk of being punished, right? So if we don't do certain things, we're then punished or possibly sometimes rewarded. So that gives us a driving factor and something to work towards. But when you remove that and that external factor is taken away, and you don't have your commanding officer, or you don't have whoever holds you accountable to answer to, you can possibly lose that. So having the self-discipline to be able to be answerable to yourself, and to have the accountability and take that responsibility on yourself, and going through those motions to build that discipline. Because a lot of people, let's face it, they don't know what discipline is. And a lot of people tell me that they're lacking in motivation, or they don't know how to motivate themselves. But, when we look at it, it's not necessarily a lack of motivation that they're missing. It's a lack of discipline, and they haven't necessarily been through a process of being able to build discipline for themselves and to do things that they need to do, regardless of whether they want to do them or not. So being able to develop and build on that discipline is then going to help your physical fitness. It's going to help your nutrition. It's going to help you be able to practice mindfulness. It's going to help you be able to focus on your sleep and all those other areas. And then focusing on that self-discipline, then just, it gives yourself so much self-confidence, so much self-awareness, and it helps you build trust in yourself. So I think that, even though it's not one of my founding pillars, it comes to play into every single one of those, and building discipline is such an important factor for people, I think.
Yeah, mate, brilliant answer. Like you said, a lot of people do rely on extrinsic discipline, where they're, someone else is their driving force, or something else is their driving force. They've got a deadline to hit at work, or whatever it might be, So, and that's a difference. That's literally the difference between motivation and discipline. Motivation is fleeting. It comes and goes. If you're relying on motivation to get shit done, like, what happens? And that's the thing. When someone wants to change something in their life, what do? They fucking throw everything in together at once. Now I'm going to, clean up my diet. Now I'm going to train 5 times a week. Now I'm going to get 8 hours sleep. I'm going to drink 3 liters of water, and blah, 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 blah. Like, that's all well and good when motivation's there. Okay. But what happens when life starts catching up with you, and you fucking, you get overrun, and you start losing time, and, you're under stress. You had a fight with your missus, and you got financial problems and whatever. When life starts happening, kicks you in the balls, that motivation's not going to last. And this is where that discipline comes into play. So, discipline, I haven't actually read this book, but it's on my list. I think I've already bought it, but Discipline Equals Freedom by Jocko Willink. And I was thinking about this last night, because I'm actually in the middle of recording my time management podcast, which will have already been released by the time this episode comes out. But something that I was thinking about there, and I've obviously been thinking very deeply about how to present this information on time management. And realistically, it all comes down to what your values are. And if you understand what your values are, then that drives your actions, that drives your behaviors. And, it kind of pushes you in the right direction. And this is where the discipline comes into play. Discipline for me is doing the things that I know I should do, even though I don't feel like doing it, right? And for me, like going to the gym, I've created that discipline around going to the gym. And it's actually easier for me to go to the gym than not go to the gym. And that's simply because I've built that habit. I've built that consistency over long, long periods of time, So is there any advice that you can give to people to build that discipline into their life?
I think, like you said there, it's not trying to do everything at once, not trying to go from 0 to 100. It's building it up gradually. So focusing on one area first, whether you want to start training make that a habit, make that a behavior, then look at your nutrition, then look at your hydration, or actually maybe do that the opposite way around. And it's funny, the keep it simple 7, I have sleep last, right? But if I had my way, I'd have sleep first. But if I bring that into somebody's program as the first thing, they're going to lose interest straight away. It's everybody wants to train. So, I mean, the advice would be just to take it slowly and slowly start to develop these habits and behaviors. And like you said, think about what your values are. Because if you don't have values, you don't have any direction. And that comes back to your identity. It's knowing who you are, it's knowing what your values are, and it's knowing what you stand for. So if you want to become a fitter, healthier person, you need to adopt the habits and the behaviors of somebody that's fitter and healthier. So you need to essentially change your identity. So from being one person one day to completely changing your identity in 24 hours, it's never going to happen. But if you can give yourself a year and say, right, I'm slowly going to get to this point, but rather than looking at what the objective or the goal is, focus on those daily actions and behaviors that you want to learn or that you want to adopt from somebody that you want to become, then that's going to be so much easier to get there rather than just trying to make a full kind of 360-degree turnaround.
Yeah, that's brilliant, man. And that's something that that's the reason I asked that question is which one of those principles is most important to you? And I mean, ultimately it's a trick question, right? Like every single person's going to be different. And as coaches, we need to meet our clients where they're at, so we both know that sleep is fucking important. You could be eating, you could be following good meal plan, hitting good calorie intake, good macronutrients, micronutrients, etc. Could be following a really solid training program. Your stress management's pretty good throughout the rest of your life, etc., etc. But if you're not sleeping very well, then your body's ability to recover is going to be, decreased, and then that's going to affect your performance, and that's going to affect your cognitive ability, etc., etc. So, for me, it comes back down to meeting my clients where they are. And that's the thing, we look at one thing, and as coaches, we need to understand what these principles are and go, right, well, all of these are important, but one of these is going to be more important right now. Which one can we get you to follow consistently over time? And even though for us, we might be looking at sleep as the most important thing, for that person, it might be nutrition. Let's work with nutrition first. They say that I can't get 8 hours sleep a night. So, all right, cool. Let's not focus on that principle. Let's go to nutrition. All right, what are we doing here? We're looking at their caloric intake. We're looking at their energy balance. We're looking at their macronutrients, micronutrients, any possible deficiencies there. And then we go, cool. What's one thing you can do here? I'm seeing a deficiency with micronutrients. Okay, I'm seeing a deficiency with water, and your macronutrient balance is way out of whack. You're eating way too many carbohydrates. All right, so what's the one thing out of those three? We can reduce your carbs, increase your protein. We can add some more vegetables in, or we can drink some more water. Which one of those three things can you do consistently for the next week? And then the client goes, I can do X, Y, Z. Okay, cool. Let's just focus on that. And once we build that foundation, once we build that principle, once we build that habit and consistency, then we add the next thing. So I think that's an important takeaway for a lot of people, man, is that, you can't do everything at once, and you need to prioritize. And obviously, there's going to be things that are higher and lower on the priority scale, but it really comes down to what can you do consistently right now that is going to have the biggest impact.
And I think that's important as well, is putting it back in the hand of the client, right? So rather than telling them, right now I want you to eat less carbs, or now I want you to eat more protein, it's giving them the opportunity to put things into their hands so that they can choose what's going to be easier for them to integrate into their lifestyle.
Yeah. I for some reason, like over the last probably 4 or 5 years of my coaching career, man, I've figured that out, that everything comes back to putting it back onto my clients. When I first started out, it was like, here's your training program, here's your meal plan, here's this, here's that. And people just didn't fucking follow it. So I was like, right, I'm not going to do meal plans anymore. And, I'm going to make sure that I get you to track your food. And the reason I'm getting you to track your food is so you can start connecting the dots with how food makes you feel, how much energy is on a plate, what your macronutrient ratios are, how these foods are, making you feel and affecting you. Are you getting digestive issues, bloating, gas, energy crashes and things like that? And then, I'm explaining this stuff and then putting it back onto the client. So then they start connecting the dots with what's going on, what's serving them and what's not serving them.
Yeah. So important to do that.
Yeah, for sure, man. Cool, mate. We're just coming up to the 1 hour mark. So let's start wrapping up. Let me first ask, what would you say to people to get them to, or what would you recommend to people to allow them to live life to the fullest, train to their potential, and perform at their best?
I think to live life to the fullest is just to live every day as if you're not going to be around forever. Don't be that guy that looks back and has regrets. And if there's something you want to do, you've got to go out there and do it, and don't hold back and give it everything you've got. Training to your potential, I think to me that means leaving nothing on the table, or whether it's nothing on the cage or on the mat or on the track or whatever it is. As long as you've given everything that you've got and you've kind of emptied your tank, then you're never going to have any regrets. But also to kind of keep demanding more of yourself to live up to that potential, and to stay hungry. What was the last one you said then? The perform at your best, right? That I pretty much think is just doing the best that you can with what you've got in any situation. Because if you do that, nobody can ask any more of you. Regardless of what resources are available to you, you just do the best with what you've got. And have the integrity to know that whatever you did, that you gave it your best shot.
Yeah, I love it, mate. Appreciate the answer. So for the listeners, you do have an online coaching business. If people want to get in contact with you and they like your message and they want to work with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, so my online coaching business is still KIS Fitness. So it's KIS-fitness.com. Keep it simple, fitness. It's probably the best way. That's my website, or I'm on Instagram at the.rob.morgan.
Yeah, cool, mate. Anywhere else people can find you? Do you have a Facebook business page?
Facebook business page, is KIS Fitness, Simplifying Fitness for Men. That's my Facebook business page. Or just, Rob Morgan. Hit me up.
Brilliant. I'll have all of these links in the episode show notes. Rob Morgan, thank you very much for your time, mate. Always appreciate getting to sit down, talk shop with you, man. You are a fucking good coach, and, we've shared a lot of knowledge and experience and bounced a lot of ideas off each other over the last couple of years. So thank you very much for coming on to the Live, Train, Perform podcast, mate. Really appreciate your time, and I will catch you next time, brother.
Thanks, Shaun. Take it easy, brother.
The Western world is in the middle of a mental health crisis, and our veterans have taken action. Swiss8's team of combat veterans have built a proactive mental health program that is delivered through a mobile app. The app offers users programs in 8 categories of health and lifestyle, all proven to reduce anxiety and depression. This holistic model forms your daily routine, aiding you to build structure, improve discipline, and take ownership of your life. Once these habits are formed, the app will teach you new skills that can form identity, purpose, and encourage physical interaction to rebuild your tribe and reduce isolation.